Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Some successes and some shortcomings. That's how community leaders say Billings fared after lawmakers wrapped up the 2019 legislature.
One of the biggest issues with Billings in mind, the 406 Impact District bill, which would have created a funding mechanism for the development of One Big Sky.
But despite massive chamber support, the bill never made it off the ground.
Although Impact District bills saw bipartisan support from both urban and rural areas across the state, the bill failed on the Senate floor by just 2 votes. But what Billings will gain from is a massive bonding bill, which will pour $80 million for economic development and infrastructure projects here in Montana.
Here's some of what will affect our region. The bonding bill includes $1.3 million needed for water lines at Makoshika State Park and also increased funding for trails around Billings. Also
$400,000 to support funding for the Moss Mansion and a pair of human trafficking bills that will require massage parlors to have proper credentials.
And while there is some disappointment concerning the failure of the 406 Impact District bill, Billings Chamber folks say there was a lot of interest and engagement, and that could propel that issue again for the 2021 legislature.
Well, speaking of the 2021 legislature, many of the key issues that lawmakers dealt with in Helena this year will likely resurface in 2 years, and the arguing will start all over again.
Issues such as Medicaid expansion and the future of the Colstrip power plants and transmission lines.
There are so many things that are going to essentially need to be redebated and reanalyzed in 2021, even Medicaid expansion. I mean, we've got a new sunset on the renewed Medicaid expansion. We're going to have to see how the thing functions in 2 years, whether it's Medicaid expansion, whether it's what we're doing with transmission across the state, starting at Colstrip and moving west. You know, we will start with, I think, many of the same issues as 2021 session convenes as we had to deal with in 2019.
And baseload power is important to back up renewables, of course, but it's especially important to Yellowstone County because our 3 refineries are industrial customers and they need very reliable power. They can't afford to have the lights go off. It needs to be on 24/7, 365 for them. And you know, there's an imminent closure of Colstrip 1 and 2. They will be closing before 2022. That's where that industrial power is generated now.
So in many respects, the 2021 session could be a case of deja vu.
But while many of the issues will be familiar, we will have a new governor and likely new legislative leaders, leading to a new political dynamic and perhaps some different outcomes.
Well, Northwestern Energy will be getting more help from the sun to power homes in Montana. The company announcing today it will purchase the energy from Meadowlark Solar, a 20 megawatt solar project that will be developed near Billings. Contract will help Northwestern Energy fulfill its renewable power obligations. The solar project is expected to be completed by the end of 2021.
House Democrats are threatening to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress. Barr skipped a planned hearing of the Judiciary Committee and ignored a subpoena deadline to hand over the full report and evidence in the Russia probe. CBS's News' Nicole Killian has more from Capitol Hill.
The Attorney General was not in the House Thursday morning.
Attorney General Barr has informed us that he will not appear today.
William Barr was a no-show at scheduled testimony on Capitol Hill following his grilling Wednesday before the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Attorney General is under fire from Democrats for his handling of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report on the Russia investigation.
He lied to Congress. If anybody else did that, it would be considered a crime.
The Justice Department called House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's remarks reckless, irresponsible, and false. Pelosi accused Barr of breaking the law. Last month, he told lawmakers he was not aware of reports that members of the special counsel's team were unhappy with Barr's initial 4-page summary of the Mueller report.
Do you know what they're referencing with that?
No, I don't. I suspect that they probably wanted, more put out.
Mueller had already sent Barr a letter complaining his memo did not fully capture the report's findings. So far, the Justice Department has not complied with a subpoena to turn over the full unredacted report.
If we don't get that, we will proceed to hold the Attorney General in contempt, and we'll go from there.
In an interview that aired Thursday night on Fox News Channel, President Trump said the book on the Russia probe should be closed.
I would say it's done. We've been through this. Nobody has ever done what I've done. I've given total transparency.
He dismissed efforts by Democrats to subpoena administration officials, including former White House counsel Don McGahn. Nicole Killian, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
A growing number of Democrats, including a dozen presidential candidates, have called on Barr to resign.
In an unprecedented move, the Department of Homeland Security will launch a DNA testing program at the southern border as early as next week. That new pilot program will involve ICE agents taking voluntary cheek swabs, with results expected in under 2 hours. The department says the program will target human traffickers and also what it calls fraudulent families.
Adults are actually utilizing children that aren't theirs. They're utilizing fraudulent documents.
We're also trying to identify those families that are presenting as a parent or guardian that are not actually parent or guardian, and the fraud issue that's intrinsic there.
Well, the government claims the DNA samples will be destroyed after tests are run, but the ACLU calls the plan coercive and says it raises serious privacy and civil liberties concerns.
Well, we saw a little rain coming down earlier today, Bob. With these spring storms, though, it means hail is on the way.
Exactly right. This is the time of year when the most common severe thunderstorm we see is a storm with hail in it. And so we're going to ask the question, how does hail form? Well, it starts off with a little raindrop that forms inside these big thunderstorms. That raindrop starts falling down to the ground, but an updraft grabs that little raindrop and puts it above the freezing level. And so what happens, a little layer of ice forms around that raindrop, and then it starts falling back down again. And then the updraft continues to take it back up. And each time it makes that round trip, it gets another layer of ice on that hailstone. Now, eventually, what happens is the hailstone will actually weigh so much it'll actually be in excess of the updraft. And so what will happen is if it weighs too much, it just starts to fall all the way back down to the ground. And so that's what happens when hail is formed. And that's why sometimes hailstones are bigger and sometimes they're smaller. They just didn't have as many trips up and down into the storm. We'll have your forecast for the weekend in a few minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, authorities are investigating a death out of Rosebud County tonight where a body was pulled from the Tongue River. Here's some images of the scene where federal authorities recovered the body near Ashland. We are told the family has been notified and an autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow. Both Bureau of Indian Affairs and the FBI are investigating.
A Red Lodge man is facing assault charges after prosecutors say he caused a 9-month-old baby potentially life-threatening injuries, including fractures to the child's skull.
Nathan Polikoff is not in custody and is set to appear in court later this month. He's charged with 2 counts of felony assault on a minor, incidents that happened on April 17th and 19th. The child's mother lives in Billings and was staying with Polikoff in Red Lodge. On the first occasion, the mother said Polikoff was checking on the baby in another room and then heard a thump. When she came into the room, the baby vomited.
And then 2 days later, Polikoff told the child's mother that the baby rolled off a futon and dropped several inches onto the ground. The baby continued to vomit and stopped breathing.
Several bars and restaurants at the private Yellowstone Club at Big Sky now face multiple liquor license violations, and state revenue officials are proposing to revoke their rights to sell.
Documents filed last month state 2 of the establishments had been serving alcohol without a license and hid the alcohol in a nearby parking garage. When a state inspector examined the premises in January, the inspector was tipped off a week later then and returned to find a fully stocked bar. The state seized more than 7,000 bottles and cans of liquor, beer, and wine, plus 31 kegs.
State officials say they also discovered the 4 Yellowstone Club establishments had stored liquor at unlicensed warehouses west of Bozeman for as long as 7 years. Now, that is not allowed under state law.
The Yellowstone Club is a private residential club with its own ski hill and golf course.
Now, the club's attorneys have asked that the charges be heard before an administrative officer at the Revenue Department.
Well, still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news, new technology at Billings Clinic is helping expecting mothers with labor.
And in sports tonight, Scott shows us how close the baseball guys at MSUB are to their 4th regular season title in 5 years.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.